And for more on the international implications of this conflict, let's bring in ABC contributor Steve Hill, honorary professor in the War Studies Department at King's College. Steve, thanks for coming on. I know you spent more than 30 years in the UK government working on national security. So how do you think this attack on Iran affects security in Europe now?
Thank you, Diane. I think from a European perspective, we are looking very much at what's going to happen in Tehran. The next move is going to come from the Iranian side, and they've got a wide range of options of what they're looking at. Will they escalate it, or will they try and de-escalate and perhaps capitulate?
A NATO summit is set to begin at The Hague tomorrow. What do you expect to hear from leaders there?
I think there's some wider questions about the European dimension, but Iran will clearly be a key topic of conversation. And I think the European leaders, like the Gulf leaders, need to be thinking about what is their role in this new world that we're now living in. They felt like bystanders over the last week or so. It's felt like they're doing a certain amount of posturing, but haven't really played any sort of decisive role. There'll be a lot of discussion, I'm very confident, about whether our security posture is the right one, and that's not just a defense posture, but also looking at Iranian retaliation in our countries, which might be against our own citizens, but more likely against maybe American interests or Israeli interests, embassies, synagogues, or symbolic American targets or Israeli targets.
President Trump is scheduled to deliver a speech at the NATO summit on Wednesday. He's expected to call for member countries to increase defense spending. How do you think that message will be received?
I think the Europeans have now recognized that we have relied on the US for too much, for too long, and there is a pivot. There are questions around timelines. Clearly, Ukraine, from a European perspective, is top of the list. But what's just now happened in the Middle East has very clearly brought home the instability and the fragility of the world, and the need basically to invest more. But you can only really invest more if you've got the money to do it. And I think one dimension and a connection between the Middle East and what's going on at the NATO summit will be growth, and whether the oil markets inflation means that growth becomes more difficult because we do need the money to be able to pay for that defense additional expenditure.
And now the world is watching for Iran's response to these strikes. What sort of retaliation are you expecting?
I think that there is perhaps for them a sweet spot, which is to say, if they go to the extreme and really start attacking American forces and killing American citizens as well as military forces, then that almost forces a retaliation from the American side. Complete capitulation after some demonstrative attacks, possibly against Israel, that seems more likely. But the reality is that there's probably a sweet spot in the middle where the Iranians do enough to justify to their own people that they have retaliated, but not enough to provoke another round of attacks from the Americans, so that this remains a one-off.
All right, Steve Hill, thank you.